All right. Hey, everybody. Hope everyone is having an amazing, what day is it? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. All right. So today is the day that we're going to be talking about all things financing related. And we're going to focus specifically on financing related to the BRRRR strategy. So in the BRRRR strategy, we really have two different levels of financing, and we're going to be talking a lot more heavily on the primary, the first one, because of course that's the biggest hurdle when you're getting started, but we are going to be talking about both. All right, so grab a pen, grab some paper, and grab a calculator. If your calculator is your phone, that's fine. Just make sure you have some kind of calculator, because today we're going to be getting into some of the calculations that you're going to need in order to assess which hard money lender works best for you in your scenario. So grab a pen, grab a paper, grab a calculator, and then we are going to get started in just a moment. I'll sing some elevator music for you guys while you're, getting that stuff. Just kidding. I will spare you. I'll spare you the elevator singing. All right, whoops. Let me set up my settings so I can click on these things for you guys. All right, here we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about day one and day two. Quick review, a couple of updates. The days 1 and 2 videos should be in the guides section of the Facebook group. If you don't know what I'm talking about or where the guide section is, make sure you go watch the housekeeping video, which explains all that. 2, I mentioned it yesterday, but in case you missed it, the original workbook, which I know a lot of you downloaded because you downloaded it for day 1, it had a typo in there for today's classwork. And it was specific. I'll show you in just a second because it's the main screen I'm about to show you, but you either need to just cross it out in the workbook you already have printed, or go print those pages, reprint those pages. So you're not trying to crunch your numbers and be like, these numbers don't work, I don't get it. All right, so anyway, so the updated workbook is in the guide section in day 1 if you need it, or you can just make the adjustment by hand. All right, reminder about the links you need for everything. I've been starting to see people going and watching some of the YouTube videos and watching Jen's talk and connecting on LinkedIn and all the things. So if you're working on doing all the extra credit stuff, the links that you need for everything, actually even non-extra credit stuff, the links are all in the self-scoring tally sheet. All right, so one of the things we're going to be going through today is a hard money lender questionnaire. And I've actually made it so you don't have to write all the notes. We're going to go through it today, what the questions mean. So you can take notes on it, but I basically am giving you access to the questionnaire that we have in our mastermind so that you can just print it and be able to make phone calls using it. All right, reminder today at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern is the Ask Us Anything. And if you can make it live, awesome. If you can't make it, don't worry, it will be recorded. It'll still be up there when we're done. But if you have a question, you can go ahead and put your question in the comments section of the event. So if you go to today's event for Ask Us Anything, go to the comments and put your question there. We're going to print all those questions out or somehow have access to them. And we're going to be answering those questions during the Ask Us Anything. And we will also be answering the questions of people who are there and showing up live. Those are actually going to be the higher priority. We're going to hit anyone that has a question live first. We're going to hit those because we really want you guys to show up and be there in person. So those will be the priority. But if you absolutely can't make it, then put the question in the comments and then we will get to them when we are in between questions from live people or after. All right. Oh yeah, today get your calculator out. I already said that. And so apparently there's all sorts of weather issues happening all over the country and extreme weather issues. So what some of the feedback we're getting is that some of our participant members have been out of power for long periods of time. And so normally in the challenge, we make it so that if you want to earn points for your homework, the 2 points for the day, you have to get it done by midnight. And we are, Jen and I were talking about it last night. We're going to ditch that whole thing. So in order to get the points for the homework, you have to complete the homework, but we're going to ditch the midnight requirement because at this point, there's so many people that have not had the ability to get it done in the specific time because of weather-related issues, that really, if you do the homework and you show us documentation of it, we will give you credit. Here's the caveat. Everything, when we're doing a 5-day challenge, everything has to be in and done by Thursday night for the purpose of calculating everything for the purpose of the scholarship. So the daily midnight deadline, we're going to ditch that, but the tomorrow, Thursday at midnight, that will still stand. So any homework that you're behind on, obviously, and look, the reality is the bigger benefit of all of this is what you get out of it. You get out of it what you put into it. So from that standpoint, you absolutely should knock the homework out. But for the purpose of the points, as long as you've done all the homework and it's all posted in the day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, by Thursday at midnight, it will still qualify for the points for those days. Okay, so, but in future challenges, hopefully we won't have that necessity, but we're going to adjust for this one to make sure everybody gets the same opportunity. All right. All right. So today we're talking about financing. So if it depends on what you're looking at on your screen, but do you see on the screen right now where it says assumptions over on the right, and it says purchase price 150,000? Cross that 150,000 out and put 100,000. So this picture, what you're getting is like the answers page of the subject property number 1 that you're going to be working on later today. There's 3 subject properties. And because I'm going to give you the opportunity to go through what the actual calculations are, but the purchase price is 100,000, not 150. So that's the part where you can cross it out, fix it, or you can go print the updated workbook. All right, so we're going to start by talking about what are the two main financing pieces. So there's the initial purchase. Right. So the initial purchase, what we're buying, if you think about it, we're buying fixer-uppers, right? So what you're going to find is that you try to go to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, any conventional bank, and try to get a loan for a fixer-upper property, unless it's your primary residence and you're getting that special, I think it's 203B or something like that loan, you're not going to be able to get a loan from a conventional bank for a fixer-upper. The exception to that is, and frankly, this is where it doesn't really work that well for the BRRRR strategy, is when you're buying a property that just needs a little bit of touch up and just a very small amount of, updating, you could probably get a conventional loan for that, no problem. But it's also a property that's probably not going to fit that well into the BRRRR strategy, because the whole premise of the BRRRR strategy and why it's so powerful is you're doing renovation, like you're doing rehab, and you're increasing the value of the property because of what you're doing to it. So when you go to a property and you're cleaning the carpet and painting the walls, that doesn't increase the value of the property. That's just standard, maintenance for wear and tear. All right. So Kim last night in our mastermind was saying that she got a property under contract, and I was like, oh, cool. So I was just asking her some questions about it. And she was asking, I'm not really sure if I should run this through the BRRRR calculator or the straight purchase calculator. And I decided to do the straight purchase, but kind of wanted to get your feedback. And so when I asked her some questions, sure enough, that's what it was. One of the units was already occupied and rented, although it was under market. So it was getting about $200 less per month than it could be getting if it was rented at full market value. But then the other unit was vacant. And she had, someone go in, and basically it just needs super minor stuff, just very light cosmetics. And so she was saying, I don't think I would run that through the BRRRR calculator. And I said, you're right, because by doing those couple of things, you will not be increasing the value of the property. And so it really isn't going to qualify. You could get a hard money loan for it, but when you go to refinance it out, you're probably going to have to pay money to do it, because the value of the property would be basically the same as it is now. All right. So what is a solution? If we're not going to go to a conventional bank and get financing, what are our other options? Well, there's a few other options. You could certainly pay cash for it. So you could, pay cash. You could pay cash for the renovation, or you could pay cash and you could pay for the renovation on a credit card. Although be mindful of your credit cards, because if you're going to refinance, you want to make sure your credit score stays up. And if you max out your credit cards, it tanks your credit score big time. So you always have to kind of weigh and balance everything as you're going through this. But anyway, so you could buy it with cash. You could renovate with a credit card or a home equity line of credit, or you could get private money. You could get a private money loan from a friend, family member, though not advised, a neighbor, another investor, someone who just wants to get a return on their money, but they're not really interested in doing, or they don't know how to do what you're going to be doing. Okay, so private money can be used either for the entire thing or for part of it. It could also be, So I was going to say you could also use funds from a self-directed retirement account, but it's going to be difficult to do that unless you can fund the entire project with the self-directed IRA, because you can't combine your personal money or your business money with your own retirement account. But what you could do is, let's say you have some funds, but you don't have enough. You could have another investor who has money in their self-directed retirement account. So for them, it'd be a passive, like a passive investment, and they could loan you the money. You could do the deal. And then when you pay them back, you're not paying them, you're paying their IRA back. You pay it back with interest. And then that interest is tax deferred for them. And if it's a Roth IRA, then it's tax free. They basically paid the taxes before they even put the money in the account. All right, so that's another option from private money. And the most popular one, and the one that is probably the most complex and has the biggest learning curve, but is also so readily available and so easy that this is just the choice for most people going into it, is going to be hard money, right? So hard money lenders. And if you haven't worked with a hard money lender before, I want to kind of clear out some of the misconceptions. It's funny because sometimes you'll see these days hard money lenders actually advertising themselves as private money lenders. And I'm like, for me, a private money lender is not an institution, it's a person, it's a relationship that's built. But some hard money lenders position themselves as private money lenders. But the reality is they're hard money lenders. And I think the reason is that hard money lenders have gotten a bit of a reputation or a bad name in the business for being difficult to work with or super expensive or something. So now they try to differentiate. The reason I'm bringing it up to you is because later, part of your homework is going to be to go find hard money lenders and interview them. You might also Google private money lenders and just see, do they look like they're an actual institution? If so, you're going to treat them just like a hard money lender, because that's, frankly, it's just a nomenclature. They're all doing the same thing. They're lending on fixer-uppers, right, for a short period of time. All right, so anyway, in hard money, the other thing that people are like, oh my gosh, it's just so expensive. Expensive compared to what? So let's just say you're going to end up paying 12% interest. And frankly, as you get further and further into the business, you're going to find that hard money becomes cheaper because they reward experience, because you're less risky. So they'll give you a lower rate. But if you're just getting started, realistically, you're probably going to pay about 12%. Well, sometimes people go, oh my God, 12%, like that's so much. But let me break it down for you, like what that actually is. Because sometimes you get so stuck on that because we're like, I mean, why would I pay 12% when you can get financing for 3%? But you can't for this kind of asset. All right, so if you're looking at 12%, if you think about it for a moment, how long are you going to have that loan in place? Probably 3 to 6 months, right? So you're paying 12% interest only during a short period of time. And if you don't have the ability to get that kind of financing elsewhere, then you just have to make the mental leap to, it's just a cost of doing business. So don't get hung up on, oh, hard money is so expensive. I do want to teach you how to calculate points, fees, and interest so that you have the ability to compare one hard money lender to another, because I want you to pick the one that's going to work best for you. And I don't mean best just meaning cheapest, although sometimes, it is the one that doesn't cost as much. So I'm going to show you how to actually calculate that out. But no matter what, don't get too hung up on what an interest rate is. You're looking at overall, what am I going to accomplish? And what does it take for me to get there? If I have to pay 12%, which is annual, by the way. So if you're, only keeping the loan for 4 months, you're only paying 12% for 4 months. All right. So it doesn't end up actually being a lot of money. And depending on the size of the loan that you're taking, if you're kind of in a lower priced rental market where you can get things for under 100,000, you're not talking about massive amounts of money as far as the interest anyway. Okay. So try to just let that go and accept that really is the fastest and easiest way to finance deals if you don't have your own cash and you don't already have access to private money. All right. So the initial purchase financing is the first part, right? We're going to buy the fixer, we're going to renovate it, and that's part of what we're going to use hard money for, or private money or cash. And then we're going to have it rented out by professional property management. Once the property is performing, then we're going to refinance the property. Okay, so I'm calling that permanent financing. When I say permanent financing, probably a better nomenclature would have been like takeout financing, and we're basically taking out the rehab loan or the initial hard money loan. And permanent financing or takeout financing can be done either through a conventional lender. If you're the type of borrower that fits well with conventional lending, meaning you have a W-2 job, so you can, prove your income, because with conventional lenders, that's what they want to see. They want to see your W-2, they want to see your pay stubs, they want to see your tax returns, all those things. And also you want to have your credit score be as high as possible. That's one option. The other option is hard money for takeout financing. And this is something that is sometimes just misunderstood, or people just don't know about it because they haven't heard about it. But I noticed this shift a couple of years ago, when we're in a time where economically speaking, like the country's just on fire, like everything is just good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Specifically housing, and housing's been good for a really long time, for many, many years. Hard money lenders during those really, really good times are focusing primarily on fix and flip. That's where they're going to make the most money. But what you see is when things start slowing down, or when the hard money lenders start looking at the kind of the overall cycle of real estate, and they realize, okay, everything is good, but at some point it's going to slow down because we've passed the time frame in the typical real estate cycle, that there's going to be fewer people flipping because the markets are going to start turning from sellers markets to buyers markets, or they're just going to be softening, and there's going to be fewer investors trying to flip because it takes longer to do it, or it's hard to make the money, or there's a little bit more risk with ARV, right? So you'll see flippers starting to move more towards buy and hold. So anyway, what the hard money lenders do strategically in their business model, which is very smart, is they also adjust. They're still doing fix and flip loans like all day long, but now they're also offering rental loans. Now that doesn't mean all hard money lenders, but a lot of hard money lenders do that, because when the economy slows down and things aren't so hot for fix and flip anymore, they still want to make money. So if you're not the type of borrower that fits into the nice, perfect box for conventional loans, hard money is a really good alternative. A conventional is always going to be cheaper than hard money. So if you can qualify for conventional, that's a really good option. But there is one other thing I want to talk about real quick. And this came up yesterday in our mastermind call when I was talking to Chris, and because he was basically saying, well, how many conventional loans can you get? And I want to say that it's like 10. I mean, of course, you have to be able to qualify with credit and your income and everything else also. But literally, once you hit 10, like you can't get, like, I think it's like the Fannie Mae backed loan anymore. So you basically cap out. So what I was saying was, well, one of the things you can consider as you're doing that is, yeah, hard money might be a little bit more expensive. And the rates are really, really low right now. So hard money rates are the lowest I've ever seen for rental loans. But the benefit of going hard money, even if you can qualify for conventional, especially if your credit is starting to get kind of full from the conventional loans, is the hard money lenders will allow you to finance or refinance the deal using your LLC. And so the loan isn't even to you, although you will have to personally guarantee it. You're still signing for it, but the loan is actually to your LLC. So if somebody pulls up your credit, they're not seeing that you have that loan because the loan isn't to you. All right, so that's one of the other benefits of using hard money, is if you, based on your own asset protection strategy, if you know, I don't want to have any financing in my personal name because I don't want to have any connection to the property that somebody could find, then hard money would also be an alternative. So even if you could qualify for conventional, but you have other reasons, hard money is an option if you want to finance it in the name of your LLC. All right. All right, so hard money versus conventional. So hard money lenders are typically going to be, well, they're all asset-based in some way, but some hard money lenders are literally 100% asset-based. And some other hard money lenders are like a combination of asset-based and credit-based. And conventional lenders are all credit-based, typically, right? Obviously, the asset has to appraise. But let me explain the difference between asset-based and credit-based. So with a hard money lender, if a hard money lender is truly asset-based, they might have a bit of a credit score requirement, or a certain credit score gets you more money or something like that. But there are literally hard money lenders out there that don't have any credit score requirement at all, like none. What they're more looking at, they're still going to pull your credit, most likely, not even all of them, but most of them will still pull your credit, but they're not looking at your score because they like, for example, when I was talking to Chris last night, he's like, well, I mean, what do I do? Because right now he's got rehabs going on. He's leveraged the 0% points credit cards because that's just a smart thing to do, but because he's leveraged them all and he's kind of, I don't know about maxed them out, but let's just say maxed them out, which is a smart thing to do. It allowed him to do more deals. But the problem with that for him is that it tanks his credit score. So if he was going to go refinance a property with a hard money lender, he would want to try to find a hard money lender who is going to be asset-based, not credit-based, right? So, but with the initial hard money loan that's for the rehab loan, you're going to find that a lot more lenders out there are more asset-based. If they're looking at your credit report, if they say, I don't have a minimum credit score, but we're still going to pull your credit, what they're looking for is any indication that you as a borrower would not honor the loan. So they would be looking for recent bankruptcy or recent foreclosure, short sale, anything that indicates to them that you might be a credit risk for that property. But if they pull the thing and they just say, oh, you're just using a whole bunch of your credit cards, they don't really care. As long as you still have the capital in the bank and they feel comfortable, they don't care. So that's more of an asset-based lender. They're looking at the property. They want to know, what is the ARV? What are the rents going to be? How much rehab is there going to be? So they're going to look at the deal itself as like the absolute number one criteria. And then they look at you more as a secondary. Some asset-based hard money lenders who are not going to look at your W-2, they're not going to look at your pay stubs, they're not going to look at your tax returns, but they do want a minimum credit score. That's just part of the question you need to ask as you're going in, so that you can find the hard money lender that makes the most sense for you. You know, if you have a 680 or higher credit score in the hard money world is premium. So it's like, if you have 680 or higher, you're good. If you're under 680, then you want to find out. Some lenders have a 650 requirement, some have a 620, and some like, we really don't have any minimum, but you know, above 550 would be nice. All right, so you're going to call around and find the one that's a good fit for you and find out what the costs are going to be. All right, the credit-based lenders are the ones that are like, they're looking at you first, your ability to pay back the loan. Let me see your W-2s from last year. Let me see, a month or two of pay stubs. Let me see your bank statements. Let me see your tax returns. Like let me see a personal financial sheet. So they're really looking at you. And then of course they're going to look at the asset, but they're basing it more on you. Okay. And that really is what you're looking at when you're going to refinance with conventional. All right, so from hard money versus conventional, hard money lenders all day, every day, they're lending on fixer-uppers. It's like literally the purpose of their existence. It was to fund the deals that conventional lenders will not fund. But the thing you have to understand, especially if you ever get hung up on how expensive it is, or if it is in your mind, is you're not going to be able to go to a conventional lender and get a loan on these. Why? Because they look at that asset and go, ooh, that's very risky, because what if the borrower defaults? What are we supposed to do with it? Like, we're not in that business. We're in the business of just lending money and getting money back, not rehab, not dealing with contractors, not dealing with any of that. So those conventional banks, they're not even allowed to make those loans. It's not in their charter. It's too risky based on, their business model. Where hard money lenders, that's what they do. They lend on risky assets. Now they're not going to lend you 100% of the cost of the deal. Or I should say, it's not unheard of, but it's very, very, very rare that you're ever going to get a lender to lend you 100% of the project costs, because they want to see that you have some skin in the game, because that helps them to mitigate some of the risk that they're facing by lending on this piece of crap property. Okay. So that's also the reason that interest rates are going to be higher, because there's always this relationship between risk and reward. The riskier something is, the more reward there should be with it, right? And so from a lender standpoint, if they're going to lend on this riskier asset, they're going to require a higher return to make up for that risk. Okay, that's why you can get 3% at the regular bank, because you're talking about a performing property. What is the risk there, right? And they've already appraised it and everything else. Personal name versus LLC. So when you're getting conventional financing, that's going to be in your personal name. Every once in a while, if you have a local commercial bank, or maybe a local credit union, it would usually be like a small local bank, you might be able to get them to do the loan in the name of the LLC. But most of the time when you're doing any kind of conventional loan, they're going to be like, no, what are you talking about? The loan to be in your name. Like, they've never even heard of the other. They like, what do you mean loan to an LLC? There's no such thing as that, right? So it's just that they're uneducated and it's not part of their business model. So if based on your own investing strategy and what works best for you, if you want to be getting loans in the name of your LLC, you would be doing that through hard money. And the thing that's interesting is most hard money lenders will not lend to you personally. Like they just won't. They require you to have an LLC. Not all of them, but most of them. And the reason, and next week, I'm going to do an interview with Chad Chinnicky, who is the founder of IMC Money, who's a hard money lender. And they also have a proof of funds program. Anyway, I'll be doing an interview with him next week. And one of the things that we have talked about in the past is, oh, I just totally lost my train of thought. Where he was like, look, some people come to me sometimes and say, can I get the financing in my personal name? And he's like, no, but here's why. When me as a hard money lender am lending you money at 12% interest, it has to be a business to business loan, because otherwise it's subject to all sorts of other like lending rules. And you can't, like, that would be considered, usury or usurious. It's too high. You can't charge someone 12% interest for a house loan, right? A person. So in order to kind of get around that, it's a business to business loan. So most hard money lenders are like, yeah, we'll loan to you, but not you, we'll loan to your LLC. So if you don't have an LLC, don't worry about it. They're not looking for you to have had an LLC for a certain period of time, and they don't care. You could literally create the LLC right then and there and use that LLC. So it's not like it has to be around for a long time. And I know sometimes with new investors, they're like, but I'm just brand new. I don't have an LLC yet. That's fine. You're going to have one created. And then that's what you'll be closing in. All right. And then finally, just where do you find these different lenders? All right. So with hard money lenders, you can literally just Google hard money lenders and you can put whatever state or whatever city the property or the market that you're interested in, put that city or state in there. And then Google will bring up a whole bunch of lenders. Most of the time, what you're going to find is the lenders that initially come up are actually national hard money lenders. And it's funny because you'll go to different markets, you'll put in the same thing, and then the same lender keeps coming up. Well, if you think about it from an internet perspective, there's something called SEO, right? Search engine optimization, which means that these bigger national companies will pay, they have a whole team in place to pay to make sure that when someone goes to search for hard money, no matter where it is, that they come up first or second or third. All right. So that's why you will see, even in different markets, the same lenders coming up over and over and over. So sometimes they're local and sometimes they're national. All right. And neither is right or wrong. I just more want you to be prepared for what it is. With conventional lenders that you can just literally look for a mortgage broker or just type in, where can I get a rental property loan in whatever city or whatever state, and then you start making calls. All right, but that's going to be, the conventional one is going to be for later. Right now, initially what we're talking about is launching your BRRRR business. And that's going to be focusing first on the initial financing, which is going to be probably for most of you hard money. Okay, so part of your homework tonight is going to be looking up hard money lenders so that you just get in the practice of doing that. You'll find it's no big deal. They're very easy to find, but also calling and interviewing them. So the interview questionnaire is a link that's in your self-scoring tally sheet, so you can print that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through what some of those questions are and just explain them. Here's a caveat. If this is all new to you and you haven't done any of this before, this can feel entirely overwhelming. So here's what I want to share with you so that it doesn't have to be. Just understand that right now you're laying a foundation. Real estate investing there's so much to it. But eventually it seems certain parts of it seem easy, but in the beginning it can be overwhelming. And right now we're going to go through a whole bunch of questions. I don't want you to stress about, oh my gosh, I have to understand what every single thing means. And I forgot what Stacy said, and how can I make phone calls? It doesn't matter. Frankly, it doesn't matter how much I explain it to you. If the first time you're hearing it, it's going to be like, okay, I hear your words, but until you put it into practice, it won't be 100% clear to you. So I'm going to explain what some of these questions are, just so you have some kind of foundation, and I don't just throw you out there talking to hard money lenders and you have no idea what any of it means. All right, but just know every call you make to a hard money lender and you go through these questions and you hear their answers, it's gonna start making more and more sense. So even tomorrow, if you finish this live today and you go and you start calling lenders today and talking to them, you'll find that even by tomorrow, your understanding of this is gonna be significantly higher. because I'll lay the foundation for you. I give you the tool, but then you calling starts making each one of these questions make more sense and be more real. And you're hearing it from different lenders, and all lenders say things a little bit differently. So anyway, we're going to go through these questions. The thing that I want you to know is when you're calling and talking to hard money lenders, you're typically talking to someone who is like the front end person, the salesperson. They are very knowledgeable. They're typically talk really quickly because they are the high energy people. And just know that it's perfectly acceptable to say, can you please repeat that? And it's okay for you to be new. All right. With the real estate agents, I want you to be able to present as someone who's maybe had some experience. You and us have had experience, but with the hard money lender, there's no benefit to you coming in and trying to say you have experience when you don't, because you're going to get a different quote, because hard money lenders reward experience. All right. So it's 100% okay to be like, you know what, this is going to be my first deal. Not that you have to say that, you don't have to come out with it, but you don't have to position yourself as anything different than where you are. Because the thing that I want you to do is anytime they're saying something and you are not catching it because they're talking too fast, or they're saying something that's unfamiliar, they're using different vernacular or different term, I want you to be like, hey, can you back up a little bit and explain what you just said? Because I'm not even sure like what word you said, because sometimes they're talking so fast, and if the words are new to you, you don't know. All right. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I will tell you that part of the reason I can answer, like, it seems like nearly any real estate investing question that you guys will ever ask, I can almost always answer it at a very deep level. It's because when I was new, I was an avid question asker. I was probably the most annoying person ever, but frankly, I didn't give a crap. I'm like, I need to understand it. I'm one of those people. I would have analysis paralysis. I have to know everything. So I asked a ton of questions, and because of it, my confidence increased very quickly, much more quickly than it would have if I just felt like I was lost going through it. So I just want to encourage, for those of you who are like, I don't know if I should ask questions. Hell yes, you absolutely should. You absolutely should. It will serve you for the rest of your career, because you're going to understand things so much more quickly, because you're going to set your ego aside and just ask the question and make sure you understand it. All right, I probably killed that to death. Okay, so let's get into some of the questions. Those are not exactly in the same order as in your questionnaire, but pretty close. All right, so the first question you want to ask them is, where do they lend? And the main thing you're looking to get out of that is, are they lending in the area where you're looking to borrow? Okay, that's the main point of it. But the other benefit to asking that question, particularly if you're talking to a national lender, a lot of national lenders lend in, between 25 and 45 states. Well, when you're talking to a lender like that, and you haven't necessarily chosen a market yet, and you might end up, very realistically, you might end up working in 2 or 3 markets at a time. People in our mastermind all the time are working a couple of different markets, because you don't know where your deals are going to come from. So you want to kind of, throw those seeds out and see what sticks. So when you're talking to lenders, you might as well leverage that conversation. You're already on the phone with them to find out where else they lend. It's because maybe when you're actually doing a deal and you are in a totally different area than you are right now during the challenge, and you look at your list or your questionnaire from the hard money lender and you go, oh, cool, they lend here, they are an option. Or you're looking at your questionnaire and you realize, oh shoot, that lender doesn't lend here, so let me not even bother plugging in my numbers based on my conversation with them. Okay, so where do they lend? Do you lend on performing rental properties? This one actually isn't as important for the BRRRR strategy. I threw it in because if you are looking at multiple strategies, you're looking at, I'm interested in the BRRRR, but I mean, heck, if I found a rental property that already had rents coming in, I'm not gonna balk at that. Like, I'd be interested in that too. So that's the reason I even put this in there, in case you're someone who would do either strategy, or maybe both. Okay, so do they lend on performing rental properties? Do you lend on fixers? I mean, if you're talking to a hard money lender and they say no to this, then you're probably not talking to a hard money lender, because they all lend on fixers. So you're more just verifying and validating that you're talking to the right type of lender for the BRRRR strategy. Next question is, do you have programs that transition from rehab to rental once occupied? Okay, so what you're really talking about there is, I haven't seen it that frequently, but when I was talking to Chad from IMC Money about 6 months ago, he had mentioned a different kind of loan, something I'd never heard of before, and he called it the fixed to rent loan. And I was like, okay, well, what is that? And he said, basically, we make the initial loan is made as a normal rehab loan where we hold the rehab funds and we release the rehab funds on draws as the work is done. But when the property is done being renovated and is rented, it just transitions into a long-term rental loan. And I was like, oh, I have always, and the thing is that doesn't fit into the BRRR strategy. And I'm going to explain the difference because for some of you, that might be a great fit. But if you're trying to do the pulling out the money part of the BRRRR strategy, then that's not going to be something you're interested in. But it will, if it's something that you're like, I don't care about leaving the money I've already put into the property in there, I don't need to pull it back out, then you might benefit from this type of loan. And so I want you to be aware of it so you can ask the question. Because when I asked him about it, and he's like, well, some of the benefits are, they only have to pay, points once in the beginning and the fees. Whereas when you're getting an initial rehab loan and then you're refinancing into another loan, you're paying for different sets of financing. You're paying points twice, and you're paying closing costs is another one. Like with the title company, you're paying that twice, and different fees. So if you're doing a loan that's transitioning, you pretty much know what all the fees are up front, and you're going to pay that higher interest amount during the renovation process. And once the property is stabilized and you say, okay, I'm ready to do the transition to the new loan, the interest rate is going to go down to whatever rate was agreed upon at the time that you were getting into it. Okay, so that's a really good program if you're okay putting your money in the beginning and then just letting it be in there. All right, so that's a rehab to rental loan. And so basically, if you're talking to the hard money lenders about it, what you're saying is, what I'm asking is, do you have something that doesn't require an actual refinance? Right. And if they do, and that's something you're interested in, then the rest of the other questions we're going to ask, you would ask it about that program and also the BRRRR, just so you know the difference, because like interest and points and stuff like that might be different for that type of loan than it would be for a regular a regular rehab hard money loan. All right, another one. This one is really, really important. If we buy and renovate, do you have seasoning requirements to refinance? Okay, so let me explain what that means. When you buy a property and let's say you want to refinance it, if you are going to like one of the big main banks, they're going to probably require you to have 12 months seasoning. What does that even mean? 12 months seasoning means 12 months have passed since the time you closed on the property for the purchase. So they want to see that you've held the property for a year. Well, that doesn't really work that well for the BRRRR strategy, for our strategy. Okay, so that's something that's going to be very important for you to know if you're going to refinance with a lender. What do their seasoning requirements look like? So what you're going to find with hard money lenders is that a lot of them have seasoning, or even conventional lenders that are not like the big ones, the ones that will refinance your rental loans. Most of the time, 6 months is going to be the minimum seasoning requirement, right? But there are lenders out there, there are hard money lenders that will do a shorter seasoning period. So it's important that you ask, because you're going to find a lot of them are 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. Okay. But when you find one that has a shorter seasoning requirement, that's of particular interest if you're going to use hard money when you refinance. And let me give you an example, because it's like, wait, what are you talking about? Let me give an example of what I mean by this. So Misty in our mastermind, she bought a property. It was a fixer-upper. She got it renovated. She got it rented out. And then, so it was about 3 months. And then she's like, okay, I'm ready to refinance it. Well, the hard money lender that the initial loan was with had a 6 month seasoning requirement. And she called maybe 5 or 6 other lenders, and they all had 6 month seasoning requirements. And she's like, what am I supposed to do? I don't want to hold on to this hard money loan for 3 more months. I already have tenants in there and I don't want to pay 12% interest. And I was like, well, you got to pick up the phone and call more lenders then, because I know there are lenders out there that have shorter seasoning requirements, but you are going to have to pick up the phone and basically dial for dollars and find out which ones have a shorter seasoning requirement. And if they do, then what does that look like? And is it worth it to go with them instead of just waiting the 3 more months? Okay, so I also want to prepare you. 6 months is probably the most common, and that's what's realistic. But if you can find one that will do it shorter, that allows you to then refinance, pull some of your capital back out earlier, and get the lower interest rate earlier so that you have higher cash flow. Okay, so that's the reason you're asking about the seasoning requirements. The other thing, and I actually don't have it as a question in here, but you can put it in your notes kind of with this question. My other question is if they have a shorter seasoning requirement, like 3 months, are they still going to honor the new after rehab value? So if you bought it for 140,000 and you put 25,000 into it, and it's going to be worth 220,000. If it's only been 3 months, are they going to honor the comps that would indicate that it's 220,000, even though you just bought it 3 months ago for 140? So that's just a question to ask, because they might say, "Oh, sure, we don't have a seasoning requirement." But if you don't ask that follow-up question of, well, are you going to use the new ARV? What you might find is that what they're willing to do is a rate and term refinance, which is they're just going to basically replace your current existing hard money loan, but not necessarily allow you to do a cash out. And I do have some other questions about cash out down the line, but what I want to make sure is that the shorter seasoning, that they are going to base it on the new value that you've created through your renovation. All right. So the next questions are loan type questions. The location one was on the last one. So first one is, what loan to value, or LTV, will you lend post rehab? Okay, LTV is an acronym that you will hear thrown around a lot. Okay, so you'll hear them say LTV, ARV, LTC. So let me explain the difference. First of all, ARV is your after renovation or after rehab value. It's what the property is going to be worth after you make it all fabulous and wonderful. Okay, so that's the ARV. The loan to value is what percentage are they going to give you for a loan compared to the value of the property. So for example, I'm going to use 100,000 because it's easier for me to calculate in my head. Let's say you had an after rehab value of $100,000. Right? And I know most of your projects will have higher than that, but let's just say after rehab value is $100,000, and you're talking to a lender and they say, we will do a loan to value of 70% post rehab. So what that means is the most they would be able to lend you for the refinance would be $70,000, because the value is 100,000. The loan to is the percentage, it's the 70%. So loan to value is what percentage of the value will they lend you. All right, and lenders they're all different. So you have to ask that question. The most common that I see is between 65 and 75%. Obviously, the higher the loan to value there is, the better it typically is for the BRRRR strategy, because it gives you the higher and better opportunity to recoup some of your capital when you refinance, to ideally be able to cash out some of it. So the higher percentage they loan, the more likely you'll be able to cash out some or all of your investment. All right. Next question is, do you offer cash out refinance if the numbers work? All right. So there is a difference. The first question, what loan to value will you lend? That means the most that they would lend was 70,000 in that example, right? But let's say my hard money loan that I have in place was only 60,000. And the other amount that I had into it was just out of pocket or on my credit card or something like that. If the lender is one that will not do a cash out refinance, even though they say they'll go 70% loan to value, if they see that you only have a $60,000 loan in place, they will only lend you 60,000 because they're only going to lend you enough to basically refinance you out of the hard money loan. All right. And that's called a rate and term refi. So that's not going to be an ideal situation for you if you're looking to use the BRRRR strategy as the golden goose to allow you to have capital to do deal after deal after deal. All right. So you want to ask them, do you offer cash out refinance if the numbers work? So in that example, if you had a loan in place for $60,000 and they'll give you a loan for 70, when you go to refinance, if it's the title company is going to take the $70,000 new loan. They're going to pay off the hard money lender with the $60,000 loan in place, and the other 10,000 would come to you. Now that is an oversimplification, because the reality is the new lender is going to have fees. The title company is going to have, title company costs. So it's not exactly that, but just so that you understand conceptually, if you have $70,000 new loan, you're paying off $60,000 old loan, the $10,000 that's left, comes back to you. Now, the reality is you probably originally put that 10,000, you might've put in 15,000 into the deal. So you're getting 10,000 back out and you're like, okay, cool. Now I can use this 10,000 and go do another deal. All right. Ideally, you can pull all of it out. And back when I was using this strategy, when I was newer, 2003 to 2005, the BRRRR strategy was I loved that strategy. But back then, and I could always, not only I could pull out all of my capital, I was always pulling out all of my capital plus money. But the reason is back then, this is before the 2008 crash, which changed a lot of lending, probably for the better. Prior to then, I could get a 90% refinance. I could, get a $90,000 loan on a $100,000 property. So if my other loan was only 60,000, I was getting a check for 30. So I could reimburse myself for 15 and I had another 15,000. So it was really ideal for the BRRRR strategy. Where it was not ideal is when anything happens in the economy where all of a sudden things shift and now you're leveraged at 90% of the value. It just doesn't give you hardly any wiggle room to be able to make adjustments if all of a sudden things slow down. And because of that, a lot of, renters couldn't, because, to the 2008 crash happened, it impacted a lot of different jobs. And so all of a sudden renters couldn't pay. Well, if renters couldn't pay, then the landlords are having to pay the mortgage without rent coming in. But if they were leveraged at 90% of the value of the property, those loan payments were high. And if you don't have any rental income coming in, and if you don't have enough income coming in from whatever else you're doing in life, it was like a foreclosure wave. So not only did foreclosure wave happen for homeowners back then, it happened for investors too, if they didn't have the ability to draw on funds from other businesses they were running or their job and pay those. All right, so lenders wisened up to some degree, and they don't lend 90% loan to value anymore. At least I haven't seen that in a very long time. The highest I've heard anytime recently was 80%. And even that, my jaw was dropped. I was like, are you serious? You do 80%? I thought the maximum was 75 now. So the thing that you need to know is, as you're building your own portfolio, you got to think strategically about the future also. In one of our recent portfolio refinances, we made the decision purposefully not to pull out as much capital as we could have. We could have gone up to 75% on that portfolio loan, and we would have pulled out, a whole bunch more capital. And instead we said, you know what, we really don't need the cash right now. And frankly, we feel more comfortable because we have been through the crash. We feel more comfortable having a smaller loan amount so that if something comes up, it gives us a lot more flexibility to be able to, if we have to sell off some assets for some reason, we have the ability to do that because we have a good 30% spread. Or if we have a couple of tenants that aren't paying rent within that, okay, because our loan amount isn't that high because we only did a 70% refinance instead of 75. So we chose to leave some of our equity in the properties and not pull out all the cash. So it just depends on where you're at, because if you're in acquisition mode, you're going to want to probably maximize all the cash that you can. But I just want you to do it in such a way that you're also looking at the future and making sure that you're leveraging at a point that you are comfortable and that you could withstand if something happened, and even like COVID's a great example. Like who could have predicted that? Jen and I this morning were just talking about how we're in the next level that we're developing for our Mastermind students. That part of what that is a playbook to handle all of the random things that could never come up that could come up. And now we got to add to the list pandemic, right? Because who would have saw that coming? But it did for a lot of landlords. Thankfully, we weren't impacted at all. But there's a lot of landlords who, if they had tenants that just didn't pay and they were leveraged too high, they couldn't cover it. Unfortunately, they're going to end up losing the property. Right? So we don't want that for you. So we want you to be strategic about when you're making those decisions on the refinance to leave enough equity that you're comfortable and balancing out with the amount of cash you're pulling out. The other question on do you offer cash out refinance is what loan to value? So do you offer the cash out refi, and what loan to value do you do it at? Right? Because for example, the question above, if they just do a rate and term refinance, they might be willing to go up to 75%. But if you want to do cash out, they're like, ooh, that's a little riskier. I don't exactly know why, but it's considered riskier from the lender's perspective, they might only do 70%. Also, sometimes a cash out refinance is going to have a slightly higher interest rate because it's considered a riskier loan. Maybe just because they're lending more than they would have. So anyway, I don't exactly understand from the bank standpoint where they're coming from. I just know that that's the reality that we deal with. The next question is, do you have a minimum DSCR requirement? So if you're new to the group or new to real estate, you're going to be like, God bless you. What did you just say? DSCR requirement? What the heck is that? For those of you who've been through like our financial analysis master classes and any of the other things where you were in the apartment 5-day challenge, we covered DSCR already. So let me just cover it briefly for those of you who don't know what it is. And then as you go further in the journey, you're going to want to probably get that financial analysis masterclass so that you start to learn some of the other terminology that we have. But DSCR stands for, so write this down, debt service coverage ratio. Debt service coverage ratio. So the debt service coverage ratio is the relationship between the money that's coming in from the property. So you have your revenue minus your expenses, right? That's called net operating income. I don't want to go too far into like all the financing vernacular, but so basically let's just say without considering the mortgage payment, it's just whatever's left, right? So you have, let's say I have $1,500 a month coming in from my rental property and I have 300 expenses going out. Okay, so I have $1,200. All right, so comparing that $1,200 to my mortgage payments, that is what debt service coverage ratio is. So most lenders are going to want to see that you have a minimum of 1.25 or even 1.3 debt service coverage ratio. So in that example of $1,200, if my monthly mortgage payment with my new lender was going to be also $1,200, I would take the $1,200 of my net operating income and divide that by my mortgage payment of $1,200. So 1,200 divided by 1,200 is what? It's 1.0. So that would be a 1.0 debt service coverage ratio, right? I've heard of banks saying they're okay with that, but that would be absolutely asinine in my mind. Like I can't even imagine why you would ever do that. So don't do that. That gives you no cash flow. That's basically zero cash flow. No, thank you. All right. So if they had a situation where the debt service coverage ratio was minimum was 1.2, and let's say our monthly mortgage payment was $1,000 a month, and we want to see, oh, wow, do we have a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio? You would take your $1,200, that was the rental income minus expenses of your property, and divide that by the $1,000 mortgage payment. So 1,200 divided by 1,000 equals, if you do it in your calculator, equals 1.2. Okay, so the $200 that's left over, that's your cash flow, because your income minus your expenses is your net operating income, and then you subtract your mortgage payment, whatever's left, that's your net cash flow, right? Well, obviously the higher your cash flow is, the better for every imaginable reason. One, now you have more money, but two, it gives you that cushion for if something goes wrong that you weren't expecting, right? So if you think about it from the lender's perspective, they like to see as much cash flow for you as possible. Not because they care about you, because they don't. They care about themselves and their risk. But if they see, okay, not only can you cover the entire mortgage with the property, but you have an extra, 30 to 40% on top of that, great, because now we know even if something goes wrong, you'll be able to cover it with your 30 to 40%. And you could still make our mortgage payment. That is what their concern is. They're concerned about you being able to make the mortgage payment. So the higher the debt service coverage ratio is, like 1.4 is better than 1.3. 1.5 is better than 1.4. The higher that number is, the better you can cover the mortgage and the higher cash flow you have to either put in the bank or save for a rainy day, or be able to take care of random things that come up with the property that you weren't expecting. Okay, so that's what DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, is. So you need to ask the lender, this is related to the refinance part, do you have a minimum debt service coverage ratio requirement? Because tomorrow, When I teach you how to do all the financial analysis, this is one of the pieces I'm going to teach you. Of course, I already pre-taught you today, so it'll go faster tomorrow. But when you're calculating it out and are you making the right offer, you're going to run your numbers all the way through to the very end and make sure, is my cash flow sufficient? Is my return on investment sufficient? Is my debt service coverage ratio sufficient to meet the bank's requirements? Okay, so that's why you want to ask what their DSCR requirements are. The next question you want to ask is, does the DSCR impact the loan to value or the interest rate? Right. And I'll give you a live example of this. When we were making the decision recently with one of our portfolios, and we had to make some decisions about which loan to take, 70%, 75%, and there's all these other decisions we had to make. When I was talking to our contact at the lender, and I said, well, I don't even know that we really want to pull out 75%, but I'm just curious, like, what's the difference? If we do the full 75%, which is their max, or we go lower with only 70%, how does that impact things? And it ended up being that we got a lower interest rate with the lower loan to value because it became a safer loan for them, which it made our debt service coverage ratio go even higher because now our loan payment was going to be smaller. So anyway, you want to ask that question so that you know when it comes time to refinance what you need to be considering. Because if they say no, it doesn't make any difference, then it doesn't matter. But if they say yeah, you might say, maybe I'll pull 70% instead of 75%, if that's even an option. All right. So some of the questions that are coming now, these are the ones that are related to the actual rehab loan. All right. So first question is, do you lend or do you loan on purchase price and rehab? Most hard money lenders, the question is going to be, yeah, that's what they do. The reason I'm having you ask that question is because not all lenders are made equal, and they're all completely independent. I have talked to lenders before that say, we only lend on the purchase price. We'll lend 80% of the purchase price. It's up to you to fund the 20% down and all the rehab. So that would be one that might be better if you're doing like a really light rehab or something, but the hard money lender had a loan that you liked. There's been other ones that are like, well, I mean, we will lend on both, but we'll give you 80% of the purchase price and 50% of the rehab. Okay. And the reason you want to ask those questions is because it will help you differentiate between one hard money lender and a different hard money lender. If you have one hard money lender that says, we'll loan you 80% of the purchase price and 50% of the rehab, and then you have another hard money lender that says, we'll give you 80% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab, and you're dealing with a situation where you're trying to maximize the capital you have, you're probably going to go with the hard money lender that has the higher loan amount on the rehab because that requires less out of pocket for you. Okay, so you're asking the question, do they lend on both? And frankly, if they don't, and you're trying to minimize your cash out of pocket, you can end the call right then. There's no point in going any further because it's not going to be a good fit. You're going to have to come up with a lot of money to do it. And then the other question is, what percentage of the purchase price do you loan? And what percentage of the rehab will you loan? Now, for those of you who are new, put huge stars in your notes right now, because I'm going to tell you something that you have to ask very prescriptively. Otherwise, you are going to get wrong information. Let me remind you, who are you talking to at the hard money lender? You're talking to front guy, Mr. Friendly, commission based. Let's do a deal. Let's make some money together. Let's be friends. I feel great. I love you. We're going to make so much money together, right? That's the personality type that you're going to oftentimes find with that first person. The person that's talking to you, if you don't ask this next question, they are always going to quote you based on the most they can do. For example, you might be talking to a lender and say, well, so do you lend on purchase price or rehab? Absolutely, we do both. Okay, what percentage of the purchase price will you loan? We go up to 90%. Oh, cool. What percentage of the rehab do you loan? Up to 100%. And if you're thinking, shit, I just found a lender that's going to lend me like almost all the money. All I got to do is come up with 10%. And you don't ask the follow-up question that I'm about to tell you, you could be caught completely off guard when it gets closer to closing and not having enough capital to make it happen. Okay, so the question that you need to ask is, for the 90%, whatever they told you, for the this and the that, would that apply to me based on where I'm at? then they're going to probably say, well, I mean, well, how many deals have you done? And usually what they're asking about is they're asking about flips. They want to see that you've completed renovation projects before, and those common is flips that they're used to dealing with. So you can say, well, how many loans have you done? Or how many projects have you done in the past 24 months or 36 months? And if this is your first, you could say, I haven't done any, this would be my first. Then they're probably going to say, oh, okay, well, so in your case, then we couldn't do 90, 100 because you have to have at least 10 deals or something, whatever the requirement is to get that. All right, but that's what they're going to lead with. They're always going to lead with their best. So you have to ask, okay, well, what's realistic for me if this is my first deal? Or what's realistic for me if I haven't done any flipping, but I have 2 rentals, whatever your specific scenario is, which is why I was saying earlier, it doesn't behoove you at all to present yourself at any different level than where you're at, because you won't get the right information. You'll crunch your numbers incorrectly, and the whole strategy will start to break down because the deal's not going to be what you thought. Okay. So you got to follow up with what's realistic for me and then tell them what you've done. There are some hard money lenders out there, like, what was the name of it? There's a lender called, I think it's RCN Capital. I think they're like in Connecticut, somewhere on the East Coast. And the last time I talked to them, which has probably been about a year, and I was sitting with one of my students, and I was just teaching them how to talk to hard money lenders. And he had said, well, if you have rental properties, we would, as long as you have at least 3 rental properties, we would count that as experience, and then you could get their more experienced like rates. But if you haven't done at least 3 rental properties, or at least whatever it was, 2 fix and flips, whatever their criteria are, then you're going to be at this lower. We'll still loan to you, but we're not going to loan you as much because you're new, and because you're new, you have more risk. So we're willing to do it, but this is the adjustment. Okay, so hopefully that really drives in home why you need to ask questions up front. Another question you need to ask is, does credit score impact the percentage you will lend? So we're talking about right now the initial loan. Does credit score impact the percent you will lend? And with some, it's like, no. I mean, you're still going to have a minimum of blah, blah, blah credit score, or they might just say no, and we don't care what your credit score is. So ask that question because, for example, I don't know if it's still like this, but years ago with IMC Money, I know that in order for us to get their highest leverage, which at the time was a 90% of purchase, 90% of rehab, you had to have at least a 680 credit score. Now, they would still lend if you had lower than a 680 credit score. But if it was like something like it was 635 up to 679, then they would only lend 85% of purchase and 85% of rehab. And if it was between like 620 and 635, then they would only do 80%. So that's why you want to ask the question so that, I mean, if you're above 680, then it probably isn't going to matter, but you still want to know, because as you get further and further at this business, you're going to find that sometimes your credit score is sky high, and other times you're like, ow, I feel like a deadbeat. My credit score is so low. But the reality is, it's not because you're a high credit risk. It's because you've used your credit cards, and that so incredibly impacts your credit score negatively. So you want to be aware going forward, even if you have a great credit score now, ask that question, because as you do more and more deals and you're starting to kind of fill up your financial resources, how will that impact which lenders you can use? All right. Next question is, what points do you charge? So points, another word for points, you can put this in your notes as a little star, is origination. Because some of the hard money lenders you talk to are going to say, we charge 3% origination. And some will say we charge 3 points. Okay, so points and origination are the same thing. It's a fee. It's a one-time fee that is due in advance. Now, when I say advance, I don't mean in advance of you closing. If you're ever talking to, oh my gosh, guys, if you are ever talking to a lender who is going to try to charge you fees up front, like other than the appraisal, that's pretty normal. And if it's like a small fee for an application, like $100 or $199, like I think that's completely lame, but that wouldn't be a big red flag to me. The red flag that you need to watch out for is if they are charging you fee, because the points are usually a few $1,000s, right? 3 points on a $100,000 loan is going to be $3,000. So if they're going to charge you money up front and say, okay, well, this $3,000 is due, up front, but we'll give you credit for it at the closing, that could not be a bigger red flag. And I don't care how great they sound. In fact, the more great they sound, the more likely it is that they're going to take your $3,000 and you're never going to hear from them again. Okay. It happens, and it happens to new people all the time just because you don't even know that's a thing. So I'm telling you right now. All right. So if they ever say the points are due in advance, like you send it to us directly, just be done with them. And then let Jen and I know, especially if it's somebody you found on the Facebook group. If you ever see someone in our Facebook group that's a scammer, please let us know, because they will be booted out of our group so fast. It's not even funny. But we don't have the time to be vetting all the different people who are saying they're lenders. But if you come across someone who's bad news, make sure you tell us and let us know so that we can get them out of our community. All right. So points are due at the closing. So there's always going to be a title company. You're going to get a closing statement. The closing statement is going to show you all of the money in the deal. Like, what is the purchase price? How much earnest money did you put down? What taxes are due from you, or what taxes are due to you, property taxes, depending on the timing. What are your lender fees? So your lender fees are going to be shown as origination, and then it'll be a dollar amount. All right, so those are the points. And then there's going to be lender prepaid interest in the dollar amount, other lender fees, and they're listed there. Okay, that is, when I say it's due in advance, it's due at the time you close. But basically, even if you only kept the loan for 2 weeks, which of course you wouldn't, but even if you kept the loan for only 2 weeks, all of those upfront points, it's a sunk cost. It's a one-time origination fee. It's basically for them going through all of the work it took to even make you the loan. That's like their compensation. Okay, so what points do you charge? And these hard money lenders vary quite a bit. I've seen hard money lenders be as low as 1.5 points, and I've seen the hard money lenders be as high as 6 points. And when I was brand new in 2003, actually, I hadn't heard of hard money lenders until 2004. So I got started not even understanding what a hard money lender was. But the first time I got a hard money loan, it was 5 points and 16% interest. Now, today, what you're going to see is probably more common is somewhere in the 3-ish points and 12% interest when you're new. Now, the differentiation and the reason you need to ask about not just points is points are a fee that you pay up front, but there's also other fees. And I'm going to go through some of them with you so that you, when we're done with the interview part, I'm going to go through some of those so that you know. When you're interviewing the lenders, you really got to ask about what are all of your different fees, because you're going to looking at here's the total fees plus the points. So this loan is going to cost me this dollar amount. Okay, so maybe it's only 1.5 points, but they have $4,000 in fees. Okay, so you need to add all that together to see what's the real cost. Then you might have a lender who charges 4 points, but no fees. And when you compare everything, you might find, oh, that's actually cheaper. Okay, good, I'm gonna go with that. So points is one part of it, fees are another, and it's really more of a marketing thing. So some hard money lenders will be like, yeah, we only do 1.5 points, but they won't say anything about fees. So you have to be very good at interviewing them to extract that information out so that you're making an informed decision. All right, next question is, what interest rate is realistic for me? One of the things that's super common when you're talking to them, and especially if they just start rattling off information, when you say, I want to get some information about your hard money loans, they can say, yeah, and our loans are as low as 7.99%. Okay, so you have to ask. So if you're like, oh, cool, 8%, sweet, I'm going to run my numbers based on that. If you're new, there's no way it's 8%. I'll tell you that right now, right? 8% is reserved for investors who've done lots of deals because they're low risk, and so they get rewarded with low interest. So you have to ask that follow-up question. What interest rate is realistic for me? It's kind of like the question that I was telling you to write in your notes below percentage of purchase price in rehab. What interest rate is realistic for me? And if for some reason it didn't already come up, but it probably would have, they would say, well, it depends on blah, 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 blah. Don't let them get out of that question until they've answered you and they've asked enough questions of you to answer you. So like, okay, they'll say, well, I mean, the interest rate, well, I mean, it depends. It's different for everyone. It depends on your experience, your credit score, blah, 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 blah. And you can say, okay, well, I have one rental property and my credit score is this. So whatever they're saying, like hold them to that question and give them some information so they can say, well, okay, realistically, it would be probably 11 to 12%. They might give you a range. Okay. Whatever they say, use the higher one. Okay. Because that's undoubtedly what it's going to be. And if you can't get them to give you any answer at all, then say, well, what's the highest interest rate? And is like, should I just use that? And they'll probably end up settling, on something that is realistic. If you can't get any information on that, I would just use 12% right now, because that is probably the most common interest rate for people who are brand new in doing a fix and flip, or not a fix and flip, I mean a rehab loan. Okay, and then what other lender fees should I expect? All right, and that's an open-ended question, so hopefully they'll tell you all of them, but I'm going to give you a bunch of them later in this presentation that you can write down so that you can just ask them the questions. But for right now, just start with what other lender fees should I expect? All right, so one of the other fees that even when you ask that question and they answer it with, oh, we have this, this, and this, for whatever reason, I don't know that I've ever heard a hard money lender tell you, even though you're asking the question, about their rehab draw fees. I don't know if they just put it in a different category in their mind, but when you're doing a rehab loan, it is customary for, and it's like nearly all lenders do this, every time you're taking a draw. So you've done work, you turn in your invoice and your lien release and everything else, and they're going to send you the money. They're going to charge you each time for that. And $200 per draw is the most common that I've seen. It used to be 150, and more recently I've seen more like 200. And so what they're typically going to say in that is, well, I mean, that's not really a fee to us. It's we have to charge you because we have to pay an inspector. So hard money lenders will, when you say, okay, the work is done, they will typically send somebody who's local in the market out to the property to visually inspect it, take pictures, and report back to the hard money lender, and they have to pay that person. So anyway, so rehab draw fees are typically $200 per. So depending on how big the project is, you're going to need to build in, some rehab draw fees, which is why you need to know what that is. Okay. And then you're going to ask the question, is there any limit on the number of draws I can request? Frankly, when they're charging you per draw, it doesn't really behoove you to take a whole bunch of small draws because the cost of it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if your capital is a little bit on the tight side and you just realistically need to get the funds more frequently, just make sure that that's an option. With most hard money lenders, they're not limiting you on the number of draws in any way that's going to realistically impact you. They might say, oh, well, I mean, you can have up to 11 draws. There's no reason you should be getting 11 draws on a basic rental property rehab, but ask the question so that at least you know and are informed going in. Next is, what is the term of the rehab loan? Okay, so the term of the loan is the length of time. And so typically with rehab loans, they're probably going to say it's 12 months, but you can prepay. There's no prepay penalty. So we're going to write the loan for 12 months. That way, if it takes you more time than you think, at least we don't have to like rewrite the loan documents or do an extension. So it's 12 months, right? But if they say it's 6 months, then the question you want to ask is, what if for some reason I was unable to refinance in that time, or it took longer, what then? But I think what you're going to find is that most lenders are more like 12 months because they don't want to go through all of that. All right. And then you're going to ask, what terms are available for long-term loans? Okay. So what do they have to offer as far as long-term loans? Do they have like a 30-year fixed, like a adjustable rate mortgage for 5 years? Like, what do they have? So just ask that open-ended, and I'm going to educate you a little bit more about what some of those terms can be. Next is, what amortization period is used for the end loan. Okay, and I will explain that more also. Amortization period is the period of time over which you're paying the mortgage on your permanent financing. Okay, so you've probably heard of 30-year fixed if you own your own personal residence, because that's the most typical time frame that we see. So you're asking for, what is the time frame? If it's a shorter amortization period, if they say, oh, it's a 25-year loan, that's cool because you're going to own the property in only 25 years or free and clear instead of 30 years. But the reality is, if you're going to own it 5 years earlier, well, what's going to have to happen? Your payments are going to have to be higher. So the shorter the amortization period, the higher the payments, the lower the cash flow, but you'll own the property sooner. So you just have to weigh all those things and pick what works best for you. Next is, are there any balloon payments? So we're talking about the longer term loan. Are there any balloon payments? Are there any prepayment penalties on either loan? And what is your minimum credit score for the loan terms that you quoted? Okay, so all of these questions are in the questionnaire. You just print it and you're just going to go through it and ask all those questions and write down everything that they say. All right, and then a couple of last minute ones before we go into some of the costs. Can the property be owned by an LLC or an entity? And again, what you're going to find is that most hard money lenders say, yeah, in fact, it has to be. What kind of documents do you need from me? The reason you want to know what documents they're going to need is so that you can start getting prepared. So if you're talking to a lender and they're more credit based, they're going to say, well, we need your tax returns, we need your bank statements, we need your pay stubs, we need your W-2s, we need this, then at least you know, and you can start making a list and collecting those items if that lender works best for you. Or they might say, well, we're going to need your LLC documents, we're going to need the purchase agreement, your scope of work, we're going to need 2 months of bank statements, your driver's license. Okay, whatever it is, write them down. And on your computer, you're going to want to create a folder for financing stuff and start just putting everything in there that you know you're going to need when the time comes. Because I'll tell you what, things are crazy when you're in your first deal and you're trying to juggle everything and financing is new to you. It feels very overwhelming with all the things you need to go collect. So if you are proactive, you start collecting some of them ahead of time, it will just make your life easier. All right. And then I would tell you to ask the hard money lender, can you walk me through the loan process, including timing? All right. And it's really just for your education. So you can kind of hear like the flow of it multiple times, but from different lenders, different experience. The timing question will help you know, like, how quickly can they close? If they say, oh, we can close in 2 weeks, just so that you know, when a hard money lender says I can close in 2 weeks, what that typically means is after they've got the appraisal back. But they don't even order the appraisal until you've turned in your complete loan application package and paid for the appraisal. And then they order it, and then it takes a week. And then the appraisal comes back. And then it's 2 weeks, but they don't usually say that. They usually just say, oh yeah, we can close in as little as 2 weeks. So make sure you ask some follow-up questions, and walking you through the loan process, including timing, will help to capture some of that information. And then, do you offer proof of funds? Because some hard money lenders, to build a relationship with you, will offer you free proof of funds. It used to be IMC Money that we've had a relationship with for a really long time. They used to offer free proof of funds. But when COVID hit, it really just chopped a big part of their business. And so they had to make some adjustments. And so they do have a proof of funds program now, but you do pay for it. But you can get like a certain number of proof of funds for X number of dollars per month. So that is at least that is available and it exists. But as you're calling and talking to different hard money lenders, make sure you ask the question, because if they do have a proof of funds and there's no cost to it, or it's very low cost, you want to know what that looks like, so you know what your options are. Because proof of funds is something you're absolutely going to need when you're making offers. The real estate agents are going to ask you, do you have the proof of funds so I could submit it with your offer? Okay. And if you have if you have a bank account that has at least as much as the purchase price, then you can give them that. Or if you have stock account, retirement account, anything like that, you can use that. But if you don't, you're going to need to get something else in the form of proof of funds to give to your agent for when they submit the offer. Some agents don't make a big deal about it. They'll just put in the contract, proof of funds is due within 48 hours of acceptance. But some agents, they're like, no, I need to have your proof of funds in advance because it will make the offer stronger. All right. So it just depends on the personality of the agent and also just what's common, typical in that market. Okay. So quickly, some of the typical costs of hard money lenders: points, which we've talked about; interest, which we've talked about; and then some of the most common fees are the appraisal fees, which is nearly always, draw inspection fees or rehab draw fees, and then other. Other is where it can get all sorts of crazy. I'm going to pull it up on the screen so you guys can start making notes. I want you to write these down because I want you to ask the hard money lenders if they're not really being forthcoming as far as what other fees they have. You can say, I've heard of other fees such as, you could start listing all of these: initial inspection fee, doc prep fees, attorney fees. And you don't have to write down corporate doc review. I'm just telling you that sometimes when they have attorney fees, it's because they're saying, well, we want our attorney to look at your LLC documents to make sure that they're right for the loan. They might have application fees or processing fees, or even rehab management fees different from the draw inspection. Okay, so these are all the different kinds of fees. Plus, I'm sure we could list another 15 of them. Fill in the blank fees, because we want to fees, because we can fees. Okay, so every lender might call them different things, but if you want to be able to compare apples to apples with lenders, you need to make sure you know what are their fees going to be. What are the total fees? So when you're calculating your rehab draw fees, make sure you calculate, if you're going to do 5 draws, make sure you calculate 5 times whatever their draw fee is, probably $200, that you throw in an extra $1,000 so that you are comparing one lender to another, knowing the complete costs involved. Okay, hopefully you guys got those written down. And if not, well, then the replay will be there. You can scroll to an hour and 20 minutes and find it. All right, now comes the time where we're gonna get your calculators out. So points, this is where I'm gonna teach you how to actually do the calculations so that you have the ability to compare lender to lender. 1 point is equal to 1% of the loan amount, not of the purchase price, not of the rehab, of the loan amount. Okay, so 1 point is 1%. And remember, point and origination, same thing. Sometimes they just say it differently. They might say 1% origination, or they might say 1 point. Although it's not gonna be 1 point, it's probably gonna be more like 3, 2 to 4. Okay, so for example, if the loan amount is $100,000 and there are 3 points. So what I want you to write in your notes is cost of points equals, and then put a $sign and a line and write under the line. Like, I literally want you to write exactly what you're seeing in that equation right there on your notes. And you don't have to put numbers in there yet. You can, but I want you to put the underlines and the words, because I want to give you a model that you can use in the future. So it doesn't matter what the loan amount is, doesn't matter what the points is, you know how to calculate it. Okay, so it's loan amount times, that's what the star is, times whatever the number of points are, divided by 100. And that equals the cost of points. It would be the same thing for those of you who are more math minds. You take the loan amount times, 3%, 0.03. But not everybody is into math. And what I find is if we break it out this way, everybody can get it. All right, so in this case, what would we put under loan amount? We would put $100,000, right? Because that's the loan amount in our example. So we'd say $100,000 times 3 divided by 100 equals how much? How much is it? Get your calculators out. It would be $3,000. Okay, so 100,000 times 3 divided by 100 equals $3,000. All right, and there's your answer written out. And I'm going to pause just to make sure that you have an opportunity to get all of that written down, because it's so important and it's so critical that you get this and nail it, because you're going to use this for the rest of your investing life in figuring things out. All right, let's go through one other example to give you some practice. Okay, let's say that the loan amount is $125,000 and it's 2.5 points. What is the cost of the points? All right, so you're gonna put in your calculator 125,000 times 2.5 divided by 100. All right, did you do it? And did you get this answer? So 125,000 times 2.5 divided by 100 is $3,125. Okay, so when you do your homework, you're going to have to do this a few more times with different scenarios. I wanted to have you at least have a couple of examples to work through, so that when you do it tonight, you've had a little practice. All right. You guys ready to move on to the next one? Of course, I can't hear you guys at all, so I'm just going to have to assume you're okay. All right. Now, let's teach you how to calculate your interest cost. Okay, so your interest is the annualized interest rate. So anytime there's an interest number, it's always going to be based on an annual basis. Okay, nobody ever talks about interest in terms of per month. Okay, it's always per year. So for example, let's say the loan amount is $100,000 and it's 12% interest for 6 months. Okay, $100,000, 12% interest for 6 months. Now this calculation is a little bit longer. That's okay. So this is, before you even put numbers in, do me a favor and just write out exactly what I have on the screen right now. Leave the blanks blank. And then when we actually go to calculate it, you could write the numbers below. But that way you have an A, B, C, D, E, like step by step to get to the answer. Because sometimes when I'm explaining it to you, you're like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. That's so easy. Cool. And then all of a sudden I'm gone. And you're like, oh, wait, what? What goes there again? Okay, so I want you to write this the way I've written it, which is why I did this slide this way and put those little tiny words. I'll tell you what, those little tiny words gave me all sorts of trouble. I don't know why. Formatting, it was just not being friendly, but it was so important that I stuck with it, figured it out. All right, so your interest is equal to, what I mean is interest, what I mean is the dollar amount of the interest for the project. Okay, for the project time, right? So you take the loan amount, in this case, 100,000, times whatever the rate is. In this case, it's 6%. I realize just like on the other slide where I did times 3 divided by 100. If you're not a real mathy person, I want you to put that little extra thing in there. So it would be, gosh, I wish there was a way for me to adjust it while we're live, and I can't. But anyway, you would do times 6 for the rate divided by 100. And that's what creates the 6%. Okay, if you're more math brained and you can make this adjustment easily in your head, then just, I'm sorry, not 6%, 12%. You can just put in times 0.12. If you're not real mathy, then just say times 12 divided by 100, where it says rate. I'm sorry if I just confused the heck out of you guys when I said 6, I meant 12. I was looking at the 6 months. All right, so $100,000 times 12 divided by 100, okay, times the number of months you're going to have that loan, right? So 6 months in this case. So times 6 divided by 12, because there's 12 months in the year. So, because what happens is when you take the initial loan amount and you multiply it by the interest rate, that tells you how much interest you would pay in a year. But we're not doing the BRRRR strategy over 12 months, right? We're only gonna do it for 6 months or maybe even less. Okay, so if you do it for 6 months, we only wanna know like what's the total interest just for those 6 months, not for the whole year. That's why you're gonna multiply it by the number of months divided by 12. Okay, so in your calculator, what do you get when you put in 100,000 times 12 divided by 100 times 6 divided by 12 months? What is the total interest number that you get? Is this the number that you got? If so, that is correct. If not, then clear your calculator and do it one more time. 100,000 times, you could put in 0.12 or times 12 divided by 100. It'll be the same thing. Times 6 divided by 12. And you should get $6,000 as your answer. All right. You guys ready for one more example? One more practice round of interest? All right, let's do it. Let's say that the loan amount is $125,000 at 10% interest for 6 months. All right, I'm going to give you a moment. So write down all your numbers so that you have it all in a nice row that you can follow later. Loan amount, 125,000 times 0.10 or times 10 divided by 100 times 6 months divided by 12 months. And what do you get for total interest? 125,000 times 10% times 6 divided by 12. Is that the answer you got? You should have gotten 6,250. And if you didn't, and you're like, oh my God, I got to watch that again. Okay, so we're about an hour and a half in. I promise you we're getting close to the end. I didn't actually know how long this was going to be this morning. I was like, to Jennifer, I was like, I don't know if I'm teaching too much in here. And now I see that we're an hour and a half in. I'm going to go with yes, except what am I supposed to leave out? What am I supposed to leave out? You guys need all of it, right? Okay, anyway, so if you didn't get this, then go back to about an hour and a half point in the recording and then just rewatch it and take the time and go through the calculation so that you get it, okay? All right. Now, I want to show you something real quick. I'm not going to have you do the calculations. I just want to demonstrate something to you to make the connection of the seasoning. So let's just say that we were talking about a property that had an initial loan amount of $100,000, 12%, 3 months. Okay, so instead of 6 months, 3 months. So let's say we're dealing with a hard money lender that they'll let you refi as soon as the project's done. So let's say the project, by project, what I mean is you've purchased it, you've got all the renovation done, which is typically at least 2 months. Sometimes it can be faster, but even when the contractor says 4 weeks, it's probably more like 6. If they 6 weeks, 6 weeks is probably more like 8. So anyway, I always build in at least 2 months for rehab, even for a small rehab. And then it's going to take a month or so to get the property completely 100% performing, occupied with tenants, et cetera. Okay, so let's say it's 3 months. So if I'm initially looking at, okay, what are my interest costs for the 3 months? I'm using the same formula I just taught you, right? So 100,000 times 12% times 3 divided by 12. That means the interest during the hard money loan, the rehab portion of the loan, was $3,000. Okay, but keep in mind, 6 months, 6 months total from the time you close till the 6 month mark. If you refinanced it, you're still going to have interest. It's just going to be based on your refinance. Okay, so I just want to show you kind of how to compare. So let's say that you found out from a lender that it would be 5% if you kept the loan with them or refied with them. So we have 100,000. Let's say that's going to be the same loan amount, just to not make things super complicated, times 5%, or 5 divided by 100, times 3 more months. So now we have a total of 6 months divided by 12. So that'd be $1,250. So if you have a lender that will do a refi after only 3 months and they would be at 5% interest, you would see that the total cost during the 6 months of interest would be $4,250. Okay, and so you're comparing that to $6,000. So it's about $1,750 different. That's a fairly big chunk. But what it isn't, the reason I want you to know this is because let's say you're talking to a particular lender and they're like, yeah, we could do 3 month seasoning, but they're like 4.5 points and they're like 14% interest. So yeah, you can refinance after 3 months, but I want you to always look at the entire picture, because if it's going to cost you higher points and higher interest during that first 3 months, it might not be worth it to go with them, even though they have a shorter seasoning requirement, because it might still be just as expensive, if not more expensive, when you add that to the lower interest you're going to pay for the next 3 months. Okay, so I just want you to be aware of that as you're talking to lenders. That's why the points and the fees and the interest and the seasoning is all a relevant conversation so that you can compare one with the other. If you're talking to 3 different lenders and one says, no, you can refinance at any time, and you're talking to 2 other lenders that require 6 months, but all of their points, interest, fees are all fairly similar, then you're obviously going to go with the one that has the no seasoning, because then you're going to save, like in this example, $1,750. But if they are different and they're higher, then you really have to compare, because you might not be saving anything at all. All right, and if you might end up actually paying more. So just be strategic when you're looking at all this, and not just, oh, well, how many points do you charge? Okay, because it's really all of it that you want to consider when making your decision. Okay, so just a couple of the on the permanent or refinance loans, some of the terms. So these are some of the financing terms I want you to just have heard of, so you're not at least, coming out from left field when you're talking to the lenders. There's fixed rate loans and there's adjustable loans. A fixed rate loan means over the course of the period of time that you have the loan, it's always going to be the same payment because the interest rate never changes. Okay, so if it's a fully amortized loan, they figure out what the payment's going to be in the beginning, such that as you pay every month over the course of 30 years, at the very end, you're still making the same payment you made on day one, but almost all of it's going to principal. Okay, so that's a regular normal amortization schedule, 30-year fixed. Okay, adjustable is when there's a period of time that the interest rate is locked and it's the same. And then at that point, after that becomes adjustable. So if you see the most common ones you'll see are 3-1, 5-1, and 7-1. So a 3-1 adjustable or 3-1 ARM, which is short for adjustable rate mortgage, or it's the acronym. A 3-1 ARM means for the first 3 years, the interest rate is set. So it's just going to be the same interest rate. But after that, after 3 years, every 1 year, it will adjust. And the adjustment will be based on whatever the bank says it's going to be based on. LIBOR is a really common one. So it might be LIBOR plus whatever, right? So the loan you choose is really going to depend a lot on your overall investing strategy. So if you buy a property in an area and you're like, I really feel like in 5 years, the area is going to go up because X, Y, and Z is happening. And I'm probably going to sell these properties and roll my profits. Hopefully the 1031 exchange is still relevant at that time. Like we never know with politics if it's still going to be, but assuming the 1031 exchange is still relevant at the time, I want to sell my properties and roll all of my gains through a 1031 exchange into an apartment building or something larger to save the taxes. Well, then you don't really need to go get a 30-year fixed loan, because you're probably going to have the interest rate will probably be lower with the adjustable rate mortgage for the 3 years, the 5 years, the 7 years, whichever loan you get. They're usually a little bit lower than a 30-year fixed. The 30-year fixed, you pay a little bit more because the lender is basically taking the interest rate risk. They're like, well, if the rates go up and we could have loaned that out to someone else, but we're stuck with your super low interest rate, we want you to pay a little bit more because we want to at least be compensated for that. Okay, so just so you know, that's something that is not uncommon to see. All right, so you would kind of match up your adjustable rate mortgage time frame with your overall strategy. Right, so if you know you're only keeping it for a few years, you can get a 3-1 ARM. If you're thinking 5 years, a 5-1 ARM. If you're thinking 7 to 10 years, you can get a 7-1 ARM. All right, another financing term to consider is the amortization period. So remember, amortization period is the period of time over which you're going to pay back the mortgage, and that's what establishes your what your payments are going to be. There's, just so you know, there's also interest-only loans. I'm not a fan of interest-only loans in general because I always want to be paying down some of the principal. But there are situations, a little bit more in apartment world, but there are situations where you're just trying to maximize the cash flow because you're increasing the value so much and your whole strategy is increase the value and sell it, that you're just trying to minimize your out-of-pocket while you're going through it. So there's really no value or benefit to you in paying down the principal. But if you're talking about like a long-term rental loan, an interest-only loan leaves you in the same place 5 years from now as you are today. You still owe the same amount. So I'm not a big fan of that. But it is something that sometimes strategically does make sense. Anyway, so amortization period is something to consider. And remember, the shorter the amortization period, the higher the payments are going to be. The shorter the amortization period, the sooner you're going to pay it off. So you just have to balance those things and figure out like what's going to be best for you, because there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what are your goals and what loan matches you up best with those goals. Balloon payment. So let's say, for example, you have a loan that is it's a 30-year, well, how would they say it? They would say it's a fixed rate loan based on a 30-year amortization with a balloon payment in 10 years. Okay, so what that means is the loan payments you make will be the exact same on that loan as it would be if you had a full 30-year fixed loan. So the payments, if it's $800 a month, then you're paying $800 a month, no matter what, either loan, right? So you're paying your $800 a month, but at year 10, if you're getting the one with the balloon payment at year 10, you have to pay off that loan. All right, so that if you're selling the properties and you just sell it, pay off the loan. If you are going to refinance, then you refinance, and with your refinance proceeds, you're paying off the original mortgage. So a balloon payment is very important to be aware of, because if your goal going in is just to buy it and hold it for the 30 years and pay it off, you don't want to have a balloon payment, because it's going to force you to refinance the property and incur additional costs. Plus, you don't know what the interest rates are going to be at that time. And I don't have any crystal ball, but I have a very difficult time seeing anytime in the future, the distant future, that the rates are lower than they are right now. So just if you know you're keeping it long term, you're probably going to want to just go ahead and get a 30-year fixed rate loan, because you're probably the rates are unlikely to be lower in the future than they are now, because they're just so low. But anyway, that's what you could do to hedge against that. But if we were in a time, for example, where the rates were higher, and if there's indication that, economically the rates might go down over time, then you might be like, I'll do a balloon payment, because I'll want to refinance. I'll want to try to get it refinance into something cheaper. Okay, so you just look at everything as you're figuring out what loan you're going to take. Okay. Oh yeah. And I give the examples: 5/1 ARM with a 30-year amortization. So if you have a 5/1 ARM with a 30-year amortization, what that means is for the first 5 years, you're making the payment based on what would take the property to pay off over 30 years. And then once it adjusts, then whatever the rate adjusts to, they figure out what would the 30-year amortization be for that, et cetera. And if there's a 10-year balloon, then at year 10, at or before year 10, you got to pay it off. Something else that would be in your permanent refinance loan that you need to add to the list, I just realized I forgot to put this bullet point in yesterday, was prepayment penalty. Is there a prepayment penalty, and when? So if it's your intention or goal to sell the properties in 3 years, and you don't think to ask that question about the prepayment penalty, you might find out that your loan has a 5-year prepayment penalty, which means you have to hold the loan for at least 5 years to avoid the prepayment penalty. So if that's the case, then I at least want to find out. But there's something called, it's called like step down, but basically where if it might be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where if you sell the property in year or pay off the loan in year 1, you have like 5% penalty. If you pay it off in year 2, you have a 4% penalty of the loan amount. So these are significant dollar amounts. So that's why you need to ask the question and make sure you're matching up your strategy with the loan that you get. Because they make a big difference. And maybe by year 3, it's only a 3% penalty. Well, if that's the best loan you can get and you're okay with that, knowing you're probably going to sell it, you're building in that 3% penalty into your entire analysis, then fine. But you might choose to go with a different loan that has maybe a little bit higher interest rate, but doesn't have the prepayment penalty that's going to end up costing you thousands of dollars. So maybe you're willing to pay a little bit more, each month for the next 3 years, instead of having this huge chunk amount penalty that you might end up facing. All right. Whew. This is a lot of information, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for those of you, your brains feel like, oh my gosh, it's just, all right, let's go through your homework. So I want you to make a list of 5 hard money lenders. Okay. We talked about earlier how to find them. You can just go to Google hard money lenders in whatever state or city you're doing your initial research in, for the purpose of the challenge. I want you to talk to at least 2 hard money lenders. Now, really, the work that you're doing is a gift to yourself. It's the best gift you can give yourself is just getting into action and doing it. The more you do, the more you'll understand it. So the minimum for the homework to get credit is you have to talk to and interview 2 hard money lenders, like completely. So make sure when you're talking to the lender, because I've worked with lots of new investors and their brains will tend to get overwhelmed when they're talking to the hard money lender. And then they look at their questionnaire after, and there's like 12 questions that have no answer next to them. So make sure when you're talking to the lender that you slow them down at some point and go ask the questions that you didn't get answers to, or give yourself a second to write them in. All right. So I want you to talk to 2 lenders, do the full interview to the extent you can, and record all the results of the conversation. When you're done doing that, any questions that you have that came up during those conversations, I want you to write those down. Okay, this is your opportunity to ask us, like today at the Ask Us Anything, ask us like, hey, one of the hard money lenders said this. What the heck does that mean? right? So write down any questions you have, bring it to the Ask Us Anything. I want you to prioritize talking to the lenders first during daytime hours, especially those of you on the East Coast. It's a little bit trickier because it's already, later in the day. So you might have to call some of these tomorrow morning, which would be another reason to get rid of the midnight requirement. But as soon as you can, get on the phone, talk to the hard money lenders. That's first thing. Later in the evening, once you can't call lenders anymore, I want you to complete the loan and hard money lender financial worksheets that I made for you in the workbook. Okay, so that is, well, right here, you have just a place to write the hard money lender, who their contact name was and their phone number. Write down whatever questions you have. Okay, and then this is the worksheet that I want you to complete. So it literally walks you step by step through it. So if you have purchase price times what's the loan amount LTV equals purchase loan. So you're going to get out your calculator. This is all calculator work. All of the assumptions for these are over on the right side. Now, if you missed the beginning of this, but you're hearing it now, if you got the workbook and printed it or even saved it on day one, there is a typo on this page. Right now it says 100,000 for purchase price. That's correct. On the original one, I had 150,000, and it's a typo. It was supposed to say 100,000. Okay, so make sure you fix it on yours or reprint this page and the one after it. Okay, so you're basically going to go line by line. Purchase price times what is the LTV that's over in the assumptions? What's the purchase loan? Okay, so you're going to go through that. Now, there's 3 subject properties that I want you to do this on. But for property number 1, I want you to go do it with a pencil, please. Do it with a pencil and go through without looking at the answer sheet, and do your best to go through this. And if you get completely stuck, then fine, go look at the answer sheet, which is right behind it in your workbook. Okay, so I put that there so that you would have the opportunity to make sure that you're on track. But there's no benefit to you of just taking these numbers and writing them in, because then you haven't learned anything. Okay, that doesn't serve you or help you. So go through it, but if you get stuck, then go to the next page and try not to look at the rest of it. Just look at the one piece you're confused about and get that and go back and see how much you can do. All right, and then when you're done, come back here and compare. They should be identical. And if they're not, look to see, oh, okay, where am I off? Where am I different? And then go back and recalculate it, okay? Because it's gonna start forming in your brain how these numbers work, how everything flows through, okay? You also in your workbook have property number 2 and property number 3 with no answers. Okay, so that's why you really need to, on the first one, go through, compare to the answer sheet, make sure you really understand it. Then you're gonna do page 2 and page 3. When you turn in your homework, you need to turn in your hard money lender. It's gonna be kind of a whole bunch of pictures, so you can make it like a PDF if you want to, but I want a picture of the list of your hard money lenders to show that you made a list. I wanna see your hard money lender questionnaires filled out to show that you actually made the calls and did the interview. And I want to see your these worksheets completed. Okay, I'm not going in to check to see if the numbers are right. We don't have the bandwidth to do that. What I want to see is, did you go through and do it? But that's why I'm giving you the answers to the first one so that you can self-check and make sure you understand how the calculations work. Okay, so that is your homework. And I know it's a lot. It's a big task. But so is your goals. You have a big goal in front of you. You wanted to invest in real estate? Well, you better learn how to do it right, because it's like Monopoly, right? Oh, it's a game. It's fun. It's a game with real money. And when you F it up, guess what? You lose real money. So Jen and I, we're not having that for you. We want you to be prepared. We want you to be empowered, and we want you to take the time to actually learn it and do it right. Okay. So that is, it's big, it's heavy homework, but so is what you've decided to do. But man, you're going to be so glad later when you've got your first several properties behind you. You're like, you know what? I did take the time and I did do it right. And I'm glad, because I'm building out my entire future the correct way. And I'm not just throwing numbers at it and, oh, this is fun. It's not fun when you lose money. And we've lost money on deals before, which is why we know. And all the systems we set up as a result are to make sure that everything you do is done with complete knowledge, strategy, and mitigating risk at every potential level, so that this can be the absolute most positive experience as it can be because it's tough sometimes. So at least if we can strip out some of the common errors for you, help you have a better experience, then that's the whole point. All right, so extra credit, you guys have it on your list. I'll just talk through it real quick. You have lots of different extra credit opportunities today. Follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram name is Warriors of Wealth. Leave a review on our Warriors of Wealth Facebook page. And if you've already done that before, and if Facebook won't let you leave another review, then just take a screenshot of the one you did prior, and then just post that in the homework as extra credit. Another extra credit is register for the Hard Money Lender interview. It's next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be with Chad Chinnicky with IMC Money. They're the ones that have the Proof of Funds program. And Chad is, he's a hard money lender, but he's an educator at heart. So anytime I've ever interviewed them, he goes like into a lot of depth on things. And so he doesn't like rush through answers, and he really takes the time to explain. So that's going to be a very good way for you to learn even more about hard money, but from the standpoint of the hard money lender. And I just ask him too, like, well, what's realistic right now based on today's environment? What can people expect? All right, so that's next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Make sure you register for it. You click RSVP and you get bonus points for that. I said 1 to 2 videos, but I think in the points thing, I have 1 to 3. So we want to encourage you guys to get on our YouTube channel. I don't think people realize sometimes just how much content we have for you, free content we have for you. Like you can learn like so many different things and really just establish a very wide base of knowledge. So we want to just encourage you guys to get into our YouTube channel and explore a little bit, just see what's available to you. So we're going to give you bonus points for doing that. So you can watch up to 3 videos and get points. You get 2 points for each one. We want you to watch whatever the video is. So find something that you want to watch, something that's interesting to you, something you want to learn, so that it's not just watch it, comment, and get points. Like make this valuable to you. But leave a comment on there about, I mean, you can comment whatever you want. Oh, Jen and Stacy, we love you so much. I'm just kidding. I mean, but you can totally write that. But what I want you to write is like, what did you get out of it? Like when you watched it, like, oh, hey, I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, wow, I thank you for this. I got this out of it. Because other people who see the comment later might go, oh, maybe I'm going to watch that video because I didn't realize they talked about whatever it is that impacts you. Okay, so leave a comment. And then you're going to include a screenshot of your comments in the homework post. And you can get up to 6 points extra credit for up to 3 videos. And then by all means, feel free to watch as many videos and comment on as many videos as you want. We really appreciate when, like Crystal Jones, for example, in the last week, I think she's commented on, this is long before she even knew that there's gonna be extra credit for it, but she was like watching our videos and asking a question or commenting on something. Like I feel like the first time I saw Crystal in person, the other day on the mindset call, I was like, oh, that's Crystal Jones. She keeps commenting on our YouTube videos. So we really like that. It makes us feel like what we are doing for you guys is helpful and that it's valuable to you. So, leave a comment with what you liked about it and, just help us get the word out. We want as many people to benefit from being part of Warriors of Wealth and the Multifamily and Real Estate Investing Facebook group as possible. All right. And then of course, at 4 p.m. Pacific, so a few hours from now, 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do the Ask Us Anything live. So if you can be there live, be there live. We will answer the questions for the people who are there present first, and then we will go into anybody who couldn't come and you put your question in the comments, we'll answer those as well, and you can watch them on the recording later. Whew, you guys got your work cut out for you. Tomorrow, oh man, I apologize in advance. Your fingers are probably all really cramped from all the calculating you did today. Well, it's good preparation because tomorrow, taking it to the next level, baby. All right, so tomorrow we're going to be talking about how to analyze deals. So, we're talking about everything all the way through to the very end, the cash flow, the return on investment, the debt service coverage ratio, like everything. If I refinance at this percentage based on this ARV, what does that actually look like? How much money am I going to have in the deal, etc. Okay. Whew. Oh, and the reimbursement of funds invested, that actually is going to come from today's homework. So today's homework will lead into tomorrow's homework. Anyway, it's going to be amazing. It's probably not going to be so long as this because I'm not going to do a ton of educating about each thing, but I am going to teach you how to calculate all the way through. And then we're going to talk about just the logistics around making offers and how does that happen. All right. Well, that is all we have for today. Holy shiitake mushrooms. It's 1 hour and 55 minutes. Well, for those of you who are still here, I give you mad props, and I already know you're going to be super, super successful because you're putting in the time to make it happen. Have an amazing day, guys. We look forward to seeing you today in a few hours for the Ask Us Anything. And then tomorrow, same time, same place. Have an amazing afternoon, and we'll see you guys later on. Bye.